You're watching All24 News World News Program, and up next are tonight's top stories. Injuries reported after missile attacks on the UAE and Oman. Iran slams Abu Dhabi over ties with the Zionist entity as Algeria calls for a path to peace. President Trump launches Operation Freedom to free ships stuck in the Strait of Hormuz. There are conflicting reports of tit-for-tat strikes between American and Iranian boats, and Iran accuses Washington of making the crisis worse. And Algeria warns against turning Africa's crises into playgrounds for influence. It's proposing a clear continent-wide plan to build a secure Africa free from dependency. The Polisario demands a transparent self-determination vote, while they say Morocco has imposed a military blockade and a complete media blackout on the occupied lands. Three people were injured Monday in a drone strike on the Fujairah oil and gas industrial zone in the UAE. Authorities said 3 Indian nationals were injured after a fire broke out following the attack. The UAE Ministry of Defense said air defenses intercepted Iranian-launched missiles and drones, shooting down 3. The British Maritime Authority also reported a cargo ship fire north of Dubai, with the cause still unclear. Iran denied any involvement, saying it did not target the UAE. In Oman, official media reported 2 people were injured in an attack on a residential building in Bukhara's coastal province. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai accused the UAE of siding with the Zionist entity and other aggressors against Iran by providing assistance in the war against it. Speaking at a press conference in Tehran on Monday, he described the UAE's actions as inappropriate, saying Abu Dhabi's policies had contributed to the regional crises. He also said he hoped neighboring countries had understood the implications of recent developments and draw the necessary lessons.
The UAE's decision to withdraw from OPEC is a retaliatory move and a negative behavior. Abu Dhabi's action is not constructive in any way. Iran, as a member of the organization, remains committed to its obligations and believes that OPEC safeguards the interests of its member states. We have witnessed inappropriate conduct from the United Arab Emirates over the past 50 days, including its support for aggressors, which has led to numerous problems. We hope that countries in the region have drawn the necessary lessons from the developments that have taken place during this period.
Similarly, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai accused the United States of obstructing the diplomatic process, saying it was making excessive demands and unrealistic expectations. Speaking on Monday, he said Tehran remained committed not discussing the nuclear issue at this stage and to focus in negotiations solely on ending the war.
I've received a response from the United States through Pakistan. As for its content, I would prefer not to discuss the details at this time, as the matter is still under review. However, you can expect that the United States is not inclined to abandon what we consider excessive demands and unreasonable expectations. Therefore, we are still dealing with a party that frequently shifts its positions and raises issues that could hinder any diplomatic process. Topics such as inspections or the materials currently being discussed remain purely speculative at this stage. At present, our focus is solely on achieving a complete end to the war. As for the direction we will take in the future, it will be determined at the appropriate time.
Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf received a phone call from his Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi. According to the Algerian Foreign Ministry, the two sides discussed recent efforts to resume diplomatic talks aimed at ending the military escalation in the Gulf region. Attaf reaffirmed Algeria's position, calling for sustained diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict, stressing support for consolidating the ceasefire and moving toward a political process to achieve lasting peace in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump announced the launch of what he called Operation Freedom to free ships stranded in the Strait of Hormuz. In a post on his Truth Social platform, Trump said countries from other or around the world had requested U.S. assistance to help release vessels he described as neutral and not linked to the conflict in the Middle East. He warned that any interference with what he called a humanitarian operation would prompt a decisive U.S. response. Iran's military said it struck a U.S. destroyer with 2 missiles after it tried to enter the Strait of Hormuz near Jask Island despite warnings. Fars news agency said the vessel was heading toward the area and violated maritime security near Jask port, adding it was forced to halt and withdraw after damage. U.S. Central Command denied any ship was hit, saying it continues supporting Operation Freedom and the blockade of Iranian ports. Meanwhile, U.S. Central Command Chief Brad Cooper said Monday that U.S. forces destroyed 6 Iranian small boats and intercepted cruise missiles and drones launched by Iran. He said the strikes were part of an operation aimed at ensuring freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, warning Iranian forces to stay away from U.S. military sites during the operation. Tehran, on the other side, denied the claims, calling them false and rejecting reports that Iranian vessels were sunk, according to a senior Iranian military official cited by state media. Major General Ali Abdullahi, commander of Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, said the security of the Strait of Hormuz is under Iranian control and that safe passage must be coordinated with its forces. In a statement on Monday, the headquarters warned that any foreign force, particularly the United States military, would be targeted if it approached the strait. It said Iran maintains full control over its security and warned that any U.S. action aimed at destabilizing the situation would endanger shipping safety. In Tehran, distrust of Donald Trump has peaked amid rising tensions in the Strait of Hormuz. Officials and residents criticize what they see as a force-driven, unpredictable strategy, crushing any hope for diplomacy in the tense maritime zone. More details with Salman Asib now.
24 hours remain before the expiration of Washington's ultimatum demanding that Iran reopen the Strait of Hormuz. In a post on Truth Social, U.S. President Donald Trump warned that Tuesday will be the last day of power plants and bridges and all at once in Iran, signaling potential strikes on key infrastructure. As tensions mount around the Strait of Hormuz, Tehran is bracing under the weight of escalating American threats. Yet in the capital, resolve appears to outweigh fear. I don't think Trump considers anything beyond his own interests and the dollar transaction he is involved in. Moreover, this is someone who says one thing and does the opposite, and is not all committed to what he says. As our Maltese supreme leader also used to say, Trump is not someone who can be relied upon or engaged in negotiations or dialogue. Despite the palpable strain, daily life continues, but residents are adamant. Fear must not dictate their lives.
Trade and the economy are all tied to the Strait of Hormuz. It is all connected to that. If the Strait of Hormuz is closed, or even if 2 container ships sink there, it affects people's cargo. Everything goes to the bottom of the sea. The markets will also be thrown into turmoil, and traders will be left facing serious problems. Let me also say this. He is not a normal person. Either he does not stand by what he says, or when he does speak, he makes no rational decision. He does what he wants. He is such a person.
With the countdown to the ultimatum underway, Tehran reveals a resilient population determined to carry on despite growing uncertainty. Across the city, the message is clear. Iranians stand firm, convinced that no external threat should decide their fate.
The Lebanese Health Ministry said 6 people were killed in Zionist airstrikes on towns and villages in southern Lebanon. It reported 4 people were killed in Nabatiya, while 2 others were killed in a strike on a village in the Tyre district. Two Palestinians were killed and others wounded by occupation fire or forces in Al-Tatra near Beit Lahia in northern Gaza and in the Burij refugee camp in central Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza said the deaths were the result of continued Zionist violations of the ceasefire agreement, bringing the death toll since October 2023 to 72,612. A young Palestinian man was killed and 4 others wounded by Israeli occupation live fire during a raid on Nablus in the occupied West Bank, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Media reports said he had taken his wife to hospital for childbirth before heading to the city center, where he was shot and later died of his injuries in the same hospital. Karim has more.
In occupied Palestine, ordinary moment can turn into tragedy within seconds, as thousands of Palestinians are killed by the Zionist occupier without warning. This was the case in Nablus, where 26-year-old Naif Samaru lost his life during what should have been one of the most significant moments for his family. Naif had gone with his wife to Rafidiyah Hospital as she was about to give birth to their very first child. Full of excitement, he went to the city center to buy sweets and share his joy with his family and friends. He imagined his newborn's face as he walked through the street until in an instant a bullet struck him in the head after Zionist forces stormed the area, opening fire indiscriminately. People in the area transported him to Rafidiyah Hospital, where his wife was simultaneously under medical supervision in the maternity ward. However, despite all medical effort, he was pronounced dead. This 26-year-old died before he could see his first son or hear his first cry. His son was born fatherless, bearing the name of his father, but never knowing him. It is a story that reflects the deep and constant pain of a people whose moments of joy are too often interrupted by the barbarity of the Zionist occupation.
To other news, Algerian Minister Delegate to the Minister of National Defense and Chief of Staff of the People's National Army General Said Chengriha warned against turning African crises into arenas for power, rivalry and foreign influence. Speaking at a national forum on the Algerian approach to building security and peace in Africa, he said external actors were exploiting internal conflicts through parallel entities, separatist movements, and arrangements lacking national or regional consensus.
لم تعد المعضلات الأمنية في إفريقيا مجرد نتاج.
The security crises in Africa no longer stem only from internal factors, but are now shaped by external agendas that have turned some African crises into open arenas for reshaping the balance of power and influence, where considerations of power, resources, and strategic positions intersect in a confrontation that seems to be silent but intense in its stakes and multidimensional in its tools. This landscape becomes even more complex in areas of high geopolitical sensitivity, where external actors use internal conflicts to exploit the structural fragility of state and the resulting political divisions in order to reshape realities, whether by creating parallel entities, fueling separatist movement, or legitimizing arrangements that lack national or regional consensus.
لا تحظى بإجماع وطني أو إقليمي.
The Chief of Staff of the ANP Army General Said Chengriha said the forum aims to outline an Algerian approach to building peace and security in Africa based on clear principles on a coherent vision of African relations. He said the approach aligns with Algeria's broader foreign policy in its African dimension. Chengriha stressed the need for balanced partnerships and joint African action, rejecting imposed external solutions and calling for dialogue and respect for state sovereignty.
We seek through this forum to formulate the outlines of a proposed Algerian approach to the architecture of peace and security in Africa, based on clear principles and a coherent and integrated vision of African relations. This approach is fully aligned with the major orientations of Algerian foreign policy, particularly its African dimension, as emphasized by Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, President of the Republic, Supreme Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, which focus on the need to establish balanced partnerships partnerships to promote joint African action, to reject externally imposed solutions, to prioritize dialogue and respect the sovereignty of states.
منطق الحوار واحترام سيادة الدول.
The Army General Shingri has stressed the need to strengthen the national foundations of African countries to build their sovereign immunity and to work together toward a safe, stable Africa free from dependency.
انطلاقا من هذا الفهم
Based on this overall vision, Algeria consistently emphasizes the responsibility of African states to strengthen the foundations of their national power and consolidate their sovereign immunity so that they can collectively contribute to building a secure and stable African space founded on mutual respect, solidarity, and mutual beneficial interstate relations, far removed from the logic of independence or subordination.
أو الارتهان.
Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune presided over a ceremony marking World Press Freedom Day in Algiers on Monday. The event brought together senior state officials, government members, national institutions, journalists, and representatives of accredited foreign press. Several foreign countries or companies announced investment plans in Algeria at the Batimatek International Exhibition for building, construction materials and public works. Participants in the 28th edition praised the rapid growth of Algerian markets and its opportunities in construction and public works. Companies from Turkey, China, and Portugal expressed interest in expanding in Algeria and building partnerships with local firms.
Nous avons les plans de long terme pour l'Algérie.
We have long-term plans for Algeria. Within 1 or 2 years, we plan to open a maintenance workshop for drill machines here. This exhibition allows us to better understand the Algerian market, which is dynamic with strong demand, and that's great. Algeria is developing rapidly. Companies here like to invest, and the country is open to new ideas. That is why we are here.
C'est pour ça que nous sommes présents ici en Algérie aussi.
So this time we came here, try to find more chance to cooperate with the local companies and try to enlarge our markets here, because we think Algeria is a very good country and there will be a potential market in the future.
Nous sommes ici à Batimatek.
We are here at Batimatek to showcase our product and also to let other countries know that our Algerian company is already here to participate in projects with Algerian companies and to establish partnerships that extend beyond just supplies. They also include knowledge transfer and the deployment of our technicians to work on site. It's a promising market, a country with a bright future and ambitious projects, and we hope to contribute to their development.
Et on espère participer et aider à développer ces projets.
The Polisario Front said a just and lasting solution in Western Sahara must guarantee the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and independence through a free, transparent, and democratic process. Speaking to the Algerian newspaper Al-Ayyam News, Said Mohammed Omar, the Polisario Front's UN representative and coordinator with MNARSO, said UN and US-led discussions mark the start of a process and that it's too early to assess the results.
The United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution 2797 on October 31, 2025, extending the mandate of the United Nations mission for the referendum in Western Sahara until October 31, 2026. The resolution also urged the parties to the conflict to engage in discussions without preconditions, with the aim of reaching a just and lasting solution that guarantees the right of Sahrawi people to self-determination.
The Polisario Front's UN representative said the absence of a human rights monitoring mechanism within MNARSO affects the credibility of the United Nations. He said the situation reflects the military siege and media blackout imposed by the Moroccan occupation authorities in the occupied territories.
The Polisario Front reiterated its commitment to the success of ongoing efforts, stressing that any just and lasting solution must be based on guaranteeing the Sahrawi people's inalienable, non-negotiable, and non-transferable right to self-determination and independence through a free, transparent, and democratic process in accordance with the relevant UN General Assembly resolutions. It also firmly rejected any so-called solutions aimed at legitimizing Moroccan occupation or circumventing the Sahrawi people's aspirations for freedom, independence, and full sovereignty over their entire national territory.
A Sudanese military source said a drone belonging to the Rapid Support Forces targeted Khartoum International Airport and other sites in Khartoum and Omdurman. The source told Ultra Sudan that an RSF drone hit several locations in Khartoum state, prompting armed air defenses to respond, though some missiles struck areas near the airport. The extent of the damage remains unclear. Russia announced a unilateral temporary ceasefire with Ukraine for next Friday and Saturday, coinciding with Victory Day commemorations in Moscow. The Russian Defense Ministry said the ceasefire, ordered by President Vladimir Putin, marks the 81st anniversary of the victory in World War II. It also warned of a large-scale missile strike on Kiev if Ukraine violates the ceasefire or attempts to disrupt these celebrations. Ukrainian authorities said 4 people were killed and 8 others injured in a Russian attack on the eastern city of Kharkiv. The regional governor said on Monday via telegram that a missile strike on Mariva in the Kharkiv region caused the casualties and damaged civilian buildings and homes. Authorities in the Russian-controlled Zaporizhia region of Ukraine said 1 person was killed in a Ukrainian drone attack. The regional governor said Ukrainian forces carried out 18 strikes on towns in the area, leaving 1 civilian dead and another injured. The World Health Organization said it is responding urgently to a hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship in the Atlantic Ocean. WHO Europe Director Hans-Henry P. Kluge said the agency is coordinating with affected countries on treatment, evacuation, investigations, and risk assessment, adding that the public risk remains low and no travel restrictions are needed. Meanwhile, 3 people have died and 3 others were infected in the suspected rodent-borne outbreak on a Dutch-operated cruise ship. South Africa's health minister also confirmed the country's first case, a British citizen who was among passengers on the vessel and is now hospitalized. And that's the end of our news program for tonight. Thank you for watching. Do take care.